This lecture is on the endocrine system. To start with, we'll look at the nervous system and the endocrine system in a comparison chart. The function of both systems is communication throughout the body, but the functional unit for the nervous system is the neuron, which is a nerve cell, and the functional unit for the endocrine system is actually a gland. And what happens is that neuron in the nervous system secretes a neurotransmitter that's going to pass the message on, and the glands in the endocrine system are going to produce hormones that are going to travel in the blood. So the neurotransmitters are released into a synapse, that space between the neurons, and the hormones are released into the blood to travel around the body. If we talk about their targets, um, the neurotransmitter is going to go to the adjacent neuron or the effector, the muscle cell, that the message gets translated to. And in the endocrine system, it's going to vary because the hormones are going to travel through the blood and they're going to travel until they reach a certain receptor, which will be specific for that hormone. We do need receptors in both the nervous system and the endocrine system. If you remember, the receptors in the nervous system are on the dendrites of the adjacent neuron, and then the receptors will be on the cell surface for the endocrine system. The nervous system sends messages very quickly, so within seconds, but the endocrine system is going to take much longer. It can take minutes, it can take days, even weeks, even longer, because the hormones are traveling through the blood. But what happens with the nervous system, how long the response actually lasts is very quick, but in the endocrine system, it's going to be much longer. And then, of course, both of them are going to help maintain homeostasis. If we look at the endocrine system, we can look at all the different glands of the body that are part of it. The first one is a pituitary gland. You should remember that as the master gland because that's going to control the secretions of other glands. The next is the hypothalamus. You should remember when we did the nervous system, and the hypothalamus is going to control some of the secretions of the pituitary gland. The pineal gland, that's going to produce the hormone melatonin, which is going to help regulate the sleep and wake cycles. Then the thyroid gland, okay, which is this kind of butterfly-shaped gland in the throat here, and that's going to regulate metabolism. That's very important, and we'll look at some of the disorders of that gland in a little while. Then we have the parathyroid glands, which are these little glands on top of the thyroid gland, and those are going to maintain calcium levels in the blood. So if calcium levels get low, it'll trigger the release of more calcium that's stored in the bones. Then we have the thymus gland, and that's going to be part of the immune system. The pancreas, which is going to maintain blood glucose levels. The ovaries, which is going to produce estrogen in eggs, and of course in males you have the testes, which is going to produce testosterone and sperm. And the last one we're going to talk about right now is the adrenal glands, which are located on top of the kidneys, and those are going to secrete hormones that help the body prepare for and deal with stress, just like we talked about the fight or flight response. So if we look at the glands individually, what they do and secrete, we'll start with the pituitary gland, which is, of course, the master gland, and that's going to control the secretions of all these other glands. And we'll start with, what stimulates the secretion of this hormone. So if the kidneys are retaining water, an antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, is going to be secreted from the pituitary. What that's going to do is cause the kidneys to release some of the water. And problems there, increased blood pressure, because if you think about more fluid going through the blood vessels, you're actually increasing the pressure, or dehydration. So that, if we need to get rid of some of the water, then we need to, a diuretic is going to cause the release of water. An antidiuretic is going to help hold on to the water. So depending on what problem we're having, if we're dehydrated, we want to hold on to more of the water. Okay, so protein synthesis and the growth of muscle and bone would be controlled by the growth hormone. And two problems here are gigantism and dwarfism. Then we have follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, and we've talked about this before. That's going to, what happens here when eggs are developing in the ovary, the follicle stimulating hormone is going to cause them to release the follicle. Problem could be sterility. Then we have luteinizing hormone, which is going to actually cause the release of that egg. So you have follicle stimulating hormone, which is going to cause the development of that follicle, the maturation, and then luteinizing hormone is going to, remember that L for ovulation, is going to cause the actual release of the egg from the follicle. And another problem could be sterility, if that's not working. Um, there's hormones that control the contraction of the uterus during childbirth. That's oxytocin. And to produce milk in mothers that are nursing, there's a hormone called prolactin, which is going to cause that. So if we look at gigantism and dwarfism quickly, we see that if there's too much growth hormone. If there's too much growth hormone, we get gigantism. All right, and this is an example here. You can see this is an extreme case. And of course, we know Mini Me, and this is another actress from the past. And both of them had dwarfism because they did not have enough growth hormone that was being secreted. So we'll look at some more hormones and glands. So metabolism. Let's look at the thyroid gland, which is in the throat. It's going to produce thyroxine, is the hormone. And we have a couple of problems here. Hyperthyroidism, which is also Graves' disease, or hypothyroidism. Hyper, remember, too much, high levels. Hypo, we're going to end up with low levels, or goiter. So here we go. Here is an example of a goiter, okay, which is an abnormal growth on the thyroid, in the thyroid. And what happens is if the thyroid gland is not able to produce enough thyroxine, it's going to increase in size to try and produce more. So it overcompensates for not being able to do that. And the opposite would happen if you have hypothyroidism. You're not able to produce enough thyroxine. But here, this goiter is this growth, and people that have goiter need to increase the iodine in their diet in order to um, help, relieve that. Then, okay, the bones releasing calcium. Here, remember, the bones work as storage sites for calcium. So if the levels of calcium are low in the body, the parathyroid gland is going to secrete parathyroid hormone. And a problem there could be osteoporosis if you don't have enough calcium. Fight or flight response. We'll talk about the adrenal glands there and adrenaline or epinephrine. And that's going to, we've heard the term adrenaline before, and that's going to help prepare the body to deal with that stress. Increases the heart rate and gets the body ready to move. Problems, we don't have any. Then the next event, we're going to talk about removing glucose from the blood or releasing glucose into the blood. So right away, when you're hearing glucose, you should think of the pancreas. In this case, insulin is going to take the glucose from the blood and store it. Glucagon is going to do the opposite. It's going to release glucose into the blood. This is called a feedback mechanism, just like a thermostat. So insulin is secreted to take glucose out of the blood. So what happens is, though, if the blood sugar drops too low, glucagon is secreted from the pancreas. So that way it's going to release glucose into the blood. Once those levels reach a certain point, then the insulin again will be secreted to remove the glucose from the blood. Of course, a problem here would be diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is actually found in children. It's also called juvenile diabetes. What's happening is they're not producing insulin in order to take the glucose out of the blood. So this disorder is actually genetic. And then type 2 diabetes is also called adult diabetes. And what happens here is they are insulin, um, they don't respond to insulin. So their body needs to regulate their insulin or their glucose levels differently. Next, sperm production and secondary sex characteristics is produced by the testes and testosterone. If that's not working, we end up with sterility. Then egg production and secondary sex characteristics in females, you should think estrogen, and then the hormone that thickens the endometrium, you should be thinking progesterone. Of course, those are both produced by the ovaries. If they're not, it's possible that if a woman does become pregnant, that she may have a miscarriage. All right, and we are going to talk about regulating sleep and wake cycles. That's the pineal gland and melatonin. Now, there's a few disorders associated with that. SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, where there's actually like depression that happens because of low melatonin levels during periods of like bad weather and winter time, things like that. Insomnia where you can't sleep, or narcolepsy where you end up falling asleep at random times.